76. I'm very pleased to say that sat right next to me right now, I haven't seen him since the State Fair, I don't think, actually.
I think that's right.
Is Congressman Tom Latham. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. It's great to be with you, Simon.
You're looking well. The trials and tribulations of campaigning don't seem to have stressed you out, at least not visibly, anyway.
Well, I really enjoy it. I love being out visiting with folks, meeting folks, and listening. And that's what this is all about, to try and get information so that when we go back to Washington, that we can represent folks here and not all have that Washington come to Iowa. I'd rather have Iowa go to Washington. So that's why we do it all the time.
Now, you are known as a congressman that gets stuff done, and part of the reason for that is you reach across the aisle. You have friends on the other side, which the friends part I actually think is a really good thing, by the way. And that goes down well with independents. It probably goes down well this time around with some disaffected Democrats. There are certainly some conservatives that don't like it that much. Is it just, is that who you are? Is that just part of your makeup, or do you think this is a way you get the stuff done?
Well, just let me give you one example. I chair the Transportation and HUD Subcommittee on Appropriations. My ranking member, the gentleman from Massachusetts by the name of John Alver, prides himself in being the most liberal member of the Massachusetts delegation, and that includes Barney Frank and a bunch of folks like that. But I worked together, we communicated all year long, we brought our bill through subcommittee, through full committee, we had 3 days of debate and amendments on the floor of the House of Representatives. We had the largest percentage cut of any bill, of all the appropriation bills in my bill, and he voted for it with me. You don't have to sacrifice your principles to get stuff done. And that's the way I operate. And like I say, we had the largest cut in spending of any of the appropriation bills. We got a large bipartisan vote on the bill. The frustration I have is because the Senate has not done anything on appropriations. We ended up in this continuing resolution. So all of our work, all of the reductions in spending that we had in that bill are lost because the Senate didn't do anything this year. But you can do these things. You don't have to be yelling and screaming. You can actually accomplish things and keep your principles. To me, that's what it's all about.
That's the key part, isn't it? It's
Absolutely.
The keeping of the principles.
Right.
Because if you lose sight of that, then surely it's not even worth being there, is it?
Right. Well, you've got to get stuff done, and the frustration I have right now, and whether we'll talk about it or not, the farm bill, the wind production tax credit for wind that's causing job layoffs, and is very frustrating for someone who actually, like myself, who wants to go to Washington to get stuff done, to actually improve the economy, to give certainty to the economy. We have uncertainty on taxes, on regulations. No one knows how to plan for next year, and that's the biggest problem we have today with job creation and economic growth, is the fact that there is no certainty as to what the landscape is going to be after January 1st next year.
Here we have, I believe he's going to be the first president in history that hasn't had a budget in his first term of office. Is that right?
Well, the Senate has not. The Senate hasn't passed a budget in 3 years over there. They haven't even really attempted to pass a budget. They never brought one to the floor. They did vote on the president's proposal this year. It got 0 votes. Yep. No Republican, no Democrat in the Senate. No Republican, no Democrat in the House of Representatives voted for the president's budget. So the one bipartisan thing that happened overall and unanimous this year was a rejection of President Obama's budget.
So he becomes the first president in the United States history not to have a budget passed in his first term in his first term of office. But as a member of Congress that just voted for another continuing resolution to fund the government to the tune of over $1 trillion again as a temporary measure, you've no idea how scary that sounds to me. Are you not part of the problem in as much as members of Congress, not you as an individual, but you're part of that process, are validating this guy by continuing to pass these continuing resolutions? Wouldn't it be better to simply draw a line in the sand and say, you know what, we've just had enough of this. If we're going to default, then we're going to default. Someone's got to get serious and come around a table and address these issues.
Well, and that was the budgets, the ceiling budget last year, the debt ceiling agreement, and I voted against that on the very principle you're talking about. This was at the agreed-to number going forward. It's for 6 months. When we were having this vote, you also have to remember that the Middle East was blowing up. We've got people up overseas today. I did not think that it was proper to vote against those folks in the field today, putting their lives at risk and pulling the rug out from underneath them as far as them getting paid.
Sooner or later, we've got to have this conversation, don't we? I mean,
and that's
but it's got to be a really serious conversation, and it may take. You see, the problem I had last time with the debt ceiling, for example, was we all knew here. I said it right on the air that John Boehner was going to cave in before the end, and lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. It wasn't a shock to anyone listening to me, at least. We just have a lack of belief that anybody in Washington, D.C. is prepared to sit down and address these issues seriously. I know it takes both sides, and I'm sorry to put the entire 435 people on your shoulders right now, but you're the one that's in front of me.
Right. No, and that's the frustration I have, Simon, and like I mentioned before about if we were allowed to do regular order, if members were actually allowed to do their job in Washington, we could get a lot done. But what is happening, and you'll see the president has been running for re-election now for over 3.5 years. That's all he's been doing. You have the Senate who will not do anything over there because they're trying to protect their vulnerable members from having to take difficult votes on a budget. So we end up in this type of situation. It is by law the Senate is supposed to pass a budget, and we're supposed to merge that with the House budget and then have the basis for spending. And what I'm very frustrated that the reductions in spending that I had in my bill are all lost because of the Senate's inaction.
Yeah, and now we have another election, so it's a new Congress and everything starts from scratch, right? That's how it works. Okay, well, let's talk about another thing that isn't going to happen, the Farm Bill.
Well, it is, for me, again, extraordinarily frustrating. I have been doing everything humanly possible to try and get the Farm Bill that was passed out of the committee in the House of Representatives to the floor. There are people in leadership who honestly believe that it would not pass if it were brought to the floor. My feeling on that is bring it to the floor, let's do amendments, let's have an open debate, let's fix it if that's what's necessary. Just as a sign of my support of Iowa farmers and solidarity with them, I'm going to sign this discharge petition, which basically would, if they got 218 signatures, would force the bill to come to the floor of the House. But unfortunately, even for that to mature, for it to ripen, it would be after the election before that would actually force the vote on the floor. We need to do it now.
Isn't it a terrible reason, again from John Boehner, isn't it a terrible reason? I'm not going to bring this to the floor because it doesn't have the votes to pass. My answer to that is good.
Right.
Let's get everybody on the record. Let's see who wants to vote against the Farm Bill and move forward from there.
John Boehner is not the problem. I've personally he wants to bring it to the floor. The whip's office, the majority...
So is it Eric Cantor?
Eric Cantor is the one who controls floor activity, and they honestly believe that they cannot pass it. What they tell me, they don't want to blow up the alliance with the urban members and the farm state members that we've always had to pass a farm bill. They think that would be in jeopardy. They try to come out and say it's in the best interest for farmers to keep that coalition together and don't have a bill that fails. I think, in my mind, you bring it to the floor and you fix it, and that's how you get the votes to do it.
So the person we should be blaming is Eric Cantor, not John Boehner.
Well, he controls the floor schedule, and I will tell you, I've had several conversations with the Speaker, and he is all for bringing it to the floor.
Well, it certainly needs to happen. Let's bring on a caller, shall we? Let's talk to Brian. Brian, you're on with Congressman Latham.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, Brian.
Congressman, you made a comment earlier. First of all, I'm a supporter. I plan on voting for you. I'm very happy with the job you do. However, you made a comment just a few moments ago that got my attention. You mentioned that the Congress or the Senate is required by law to pass the budget. So when they don't pass a budget, what are the consequences of them violating the law?
That's the problem, Brian. There are no consequences. The
Well,
Budget
then the
Act,
law has no teeth.
right. You're exactly right. The Budget Act of 1974 says both bodies will pass a budget, you'll reconcile the differences, and you'll use that for the basis of the appropriations. Unfortunately, there are no consequences if they don't do it, and that's what Harry Reid, and the leader of the Senate, is falling back on. This is the third year in a row that they have not even attempted to pass a budget in the Senate.
Is there no action that you, as a representative of Congress, can take? I don't know who the higher power would be to enforce that.
Well, I have the Do Your Job Act that I've introduced, which says that no one in Washington gets paid unless we actually pass a budget, so that members of Congress would actually have something on the line if, in fact, that they did not do their job. But certainly the Senate's not going to pick that up and move it.
All right, Brian, thank you very much for the call. I appreciate
Thanks
it.
for taking my call.
You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome. We are in studio with Congressman Tom Latham. If you'd like to weigh in on that, you can do so at 284-1040, 800-469-4295. You can send us a text to the American Toffers